Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the two words that no music critic should ever use, and neither should you if you're contributing to the comments. I've mentioned this before, but I thought they deserved a little bit of a chat all by themselves because it's really important, and it tells us a useful way to think about writing about music and thinking about classical music performance. They were inculcated into me by Sedgwick Clark, Sedge for short, who was the editor of High Fidelity and Musical America in its twilight moments, which is when I was writing for the magazine. And Sedge always said, never use the words definitive and unique. And he was right. He was right for a lot of reasons. You know, when you have good style people helping you in writing particularly, it's invaluable. I had some fabulous teachers when I was in high school at Hopkins Grammar in New Haven. I mean, that was an amazing English department. And they had similar bugbears and rules and things like that. And this was one of those things that just clicked, because it was so true. Why do we not use the word definitive? Well, you should know that. I mean, we're here reviewing recordings of the same stuff as often as not, and there's no such thing as a definitive performance, one that is the one by which all others are lacking, compared to which all others are lacking. No. It doesn't work that way. I mean, if classical music has any meaning as classical music, and that is, works that withstand repetition and have come down to us through the decades and centuries and generations and remain valid, expressive objects for our delectation, then you cannot say, and there are 500 recordings of each one, then you cannot say that this is the only one. And I see this in your comments all the time. This is the one. No, it's not the one. Don't even say that. Don't even think that. First of all, it's not true. It really isn't true. You want to, I think when we are trying to understand a work of great music, we want to hear different approaches to it. We want to understand its expressive possibilities. And we want to start to define the legitimate parameters within which those expressive possibilities operate. And that precludes the notion that anything can be definitive. It really does. We can have great performances. We can have your favorite performances. We can have a slew of the best performances, which is what I try to do on this channel. I try and describe to you what the great performances are, with the understanding that in the basic repertoire, there will always be a group of them. And you've also often contributed to my group, to add to my group, to make it bigger. So, in a practical way, I mean, people may say, well, this is the best and nothing else. And Kleiber's Beethoven's Fifth is the best ever, that kind of stuff. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. It's not true, because everybody else has different versions or different opinions. However, within that range of different opinions, there are certain consensus choices. And that's what I like to get at. What are the consensus choices? What are the parameters within which interpreters operate and which give us, or are most likely to give us, the best versions? So, banish from your senses, banish the word definitive. Now, unique. Oh, unique is a horrible word, an absolutely horrible word. It's like saying something is nice. Well, what does that mean? Nice. It's not good, not bad, it's nice. Well, unique is like that. It's a filler word. It doesn't really mean anything. Why? Because everything is unique. Every performance is different from every other performance. So every performance has its unique qualities. That tells us nothing. It tells us nothing about how we weigh and value and criticize and arrive at conclusions about the importance of the differences between performance, because what we're talking about is differences, not uniqueness, difference. And so to say that so and so is wonderful because they're unique it's Every time you have a bowel movement, it's unique. I mean, where does that get you? Absolutely nowhere. And so that's it should be an obvious point, because there are people out there, and I find this terribly disturbing, who only enjoy performances to the extent that they differ from other performances. And that's fine. I mean, it's okay. It bothers me because it precludes critical thinking completely. Because if everything is unique and everything is different from everything else, and all of these differences are, it usually comes in tandem with this sort of moral relativism, critical relativism, that, well, they're all different, but they're all, to the extent something is different, it has value. Everything is valuable to the extent that it's unique. Well, no, that is not true. And that's obviously not true. There are unique performances that are horrible and that are completely outside the bounds of acceptable interpretive activity. And they're not good just because they're unique. If you are one of those people who values uniqueness simply for itself, that's fine. But you can't participate in a dialogue about the value of the interpretive choices that the performers make, because there is no value. There's only difference. And so Sedge was 100% right, in my view, in telling us never to use the word unique unless we define it. There's a way to define it. Most of the time, people don't define it. They just say, "Oh, well, it's unique. It does because it's different. It's unique." Well, no. You have to describe what the differences are, and then you have to evaluate their significance. You can't have uniqueness without significance and have it mean anything in our discussion of different, pieces of music. And so, the significance issue is a major, major, major point. I think that's really, I mean, in essence, what criticism is all about. It's about saying, on the one hand, there's no such thing as definitiveness, but on the other hand, uniqueness without consideration of significance is totally valueless and irrelevant. So those are the two words we must never, ever, ever, ever use. And I hope that this has explained why that's the case, and that, when you make comments, which I welcome, of course, you'll consider that before you just, say, "Oh, so-and-so's the best ever," and push the button. It's not true. And I delete so many comments that do that. I just eliminate them because they're meaningless. They don't contribute to the discussion of the music in question. And we do want to contribute, don't we? Contribution is fun. So keep on listening, friends, and keep on contributing without definitiveness or uniqueness. Take care.